Hi everybody. Yesterday I introduced the Matrix Delay Series 2 and I promised I'd do some videos with explanation about all the features. And yes, this is a rather complicated plugin, but don't worry, we still have some days left this year. And today I want to start with what I call a delay line. The plugin has 4 delay lines, so let's have a look at one delay line because they are all the same, know one and you will know them all. So for understanding how this plugin works, we need to understand how a digital delay works. I will make this very simple and not too technical, so let's have a look at it. We start with a signal, and this is what we call our clean or dry signal. So that's completely unmodified, simply what I play on my keyboard. And in a digital delay, the clean signal is not only sent to our mixer, but it's also sent to a buffer. The buffer is just some memory in our computer which stores that clean signal. And now, after a certain time, the signal is played back again from that buffer. So we have the same 2 notes again, but a bit later. That's why we call it a delay signal. Now let's see that delay time thing in the plugin, and this is this field here on the left side. You can see there's a timeline, so 0 seconds and 1 second, and when I scroll on that, you can change the timeline up to 5 seconds. Currently we don't have a delay at all because the delay time is 0 milliseconds. But now I can go here, grab that and put that to 1000 milliseconds, which would be a second. And now when I play on my keyboard, everything is played back again a second later. And you can do that from here, the adjustment, or from here. So that's the most simple way we could have a delay thing. We have the dry signal, we have the buffer, and we play back the dry signal again later. But that's not how we know our delay plugins, because we want these repetitions like ba-dim, 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 ba-dim. And for that, we need an additional signal flow here. And this is we take the delay signal, not the delay signal as it is, but maybe 10 dB quieter. So we only use a percentage of the delay signal and we put that into the buffer again. And this is called the feedback signal. So what happens now is that we have the original signal, the dry signal, which goes to the buffer and is played back a bit later. And this a bit later signal is going back into the buffer and is again played back later. And because we're not using the full strength of the signal, but a signal that is a bit attenuated, our echoes will decay. If this green percentage is over 100%, maybe 120%, it will get louder and louder and louder and louder. Let's see that in the plugin. So here we had the delay time and here we have the delay feedback. Let's put that to 50%. About 50%. And now what you can see is we have the delay time here and we also see the repetitions fading. Let's hear it. Now when I change the delay time, of course the speed of the feedback will also change. And when I change the feedback, it will decay faster. Or let's take a shorter delay time. And now let's do the positive feedback over 100%. I see it's getting red to warn you here. But sometimes you can use that as a sound design element in your songs. So now we have the feedback and the delay time. Let's see something else. And this is, I prepared a little drum track here. It's very simple, just for orientation. And this is my keyboard input track with the delay on it. You can see that again. And this, of course, the master track. So now when I play back, we'll hear the drums. And the delay can be set to musical notes. So let's say we have quarter notes. This now detects the BPM of the project and calculates the correct time for the quarter notes, which would be 645 milliseconds. Let's hear if that's correct. Or we take triplets. Or you can take dotted notes. And by the way, this element is always stronger than pulling that with that mouse. So it's locked now to these dotted quarter notes. And for unlocking, change it to ABS, which is absolute position. And now you can change that with the mouse again. Now we have another thing, which is this blue ITG, and this is the initial time gap. So the time from here to here. Now you could think, you said that is our delay time. So if I make that shorter, we have always the same time from here to here and from here to here. And now that's a thing that not all delay plugins can do, but I think it's very handy to have a kind of initial time gap and the actual delay time or repetition time, if you want to call it like that. Usually in delay plugins, they're simply the same, but you can also change them. So now this initial time gap is delay synced, but we can set that to free. And this is now also absolute time. And now you see we have two handles. So we can grab that and move the delay. And here we can move the repetition time or the delay time. So these are now two independent times. So we could say after a second, we have fast delays and a lot of them. And now that is very useful. And of course, the initial time gap can be set to musical terms also. So we could set that to half a bar, and the delay itself is on 8th notes. And now when I play back the drums, so we have orientation again, we will hear the result. So what we've done now is we introduced a second delay time here, and this is our initial time gap. And please look careful at these graphics. So we have the initial time gap between the clean signal and the buffer, but the initial time gap is not in the feedback signal chain. And actually that is what is making that it works. Okay, now let's see the next knobs here. And as you can see, we can set the delay line in a certain mode. Drift, jump or clear. So this means how the delay handles when you change the delay time during the delay playback. Let's go to absolute position so I can change it here. And let's go to the most simple way, and this is jump. Jump simply means that the delay time is taken from what you dial in here. And so the kind of playback cursor in the buffer jumps to this exact position. Let's hear that. And you hear that works, but that can lead to some kind of clicks and crackles in the audio, just the same as if you would cut some audio in the Reaper project without doing crossfades. Another way to handle that is the mode clear. So every time you touch the delay length, the delay time, you will clear the buffer, and this means that the repetitions will of course stop. So the buffer will be cleared and will be filled with the new incoming audio, and this then will be using the new delay time. By the way, setting this from any other mode to clear will of course clear the buffer. If you have positive delay times, you will have a cleared buffer then and stop them immediately. And then we have this cool mode, the drift mode, and the drift can be adjusted in milliseconds here. And this is the time that the playback pointer in the buffer will take to move from the old delay time to the new delay time. So it's kind of a mini automation, if you will. And this drifting playback cursor in the buffer will also lead to pitch changes. So that's kind of a tape delay effect, or what you would have in dub delays. Let's hear that. But once this time is over and the new time is arrived, you will of course not have any pitch changes again. And now the other knobs are of course for manipulating the delay signal. So in the first step we have a filter, a high pass filter and a low pass filter. Let's set them to some drastic settings. So this will now a bit mid-rangey signal from the delay. Let's reset them and see the next module, the equalizer. And this is a low shelf and a high shelf. So we could say we want the lows to be removed and some highs to be added. And this could sound like this. Maybe a bit more drastic in this piano sound. So now the sound is brighter, and we could do it the other way to have it more dull in the repetitions. Okay, let's reset them. Then we have the saturation module, which means we have a kind of a saturation overdrive effect in the playback of the buffer. I think you heard that. And we have the crush effect. And this is not only the bit crusher, which we know from other delay plugins. So we could set that maybe to 6-bit. A classic bit crusher effect. No, we can also crush the sample rate. So let's crush that to about 5 kilohertz. And this in combination with the bit reduction will give you some lo-fi Nintendo Game Boy sound things. And of course we have the output level for that delay line, and we can turn that delay line on and off here. But that's not all. We have another thing to see, and this is this FBK knob in the single modules. FBK of course stands for feedback, and now let's see that in the graphic again. This is kind of what we had before, but now I made a little gap between the buffer with this stopwatch and the delay signal, because now we have our modifiers. So we have the filter, we have the shelving equalizer, and it took some fruit because we're now not having the original signal, we have something else. So maybe from the original signal with the filters we go to an apple, and the shelving filters convert it to a banana. And the saturation makes some cherries out of it, and the bit crusher crushes the cherries to a carrot. So of course now our delay signal is no longer the 2 notes, but with these modifications it will be the carrot, because now it sounds completely different, just like a carrot. But now what we did all the time is taking the original signal from the buffer and give the delayed original signal into that feedback loop and make it the feedback signal. So this still would be these 2 notes, but instead we could give the apple into the feedback loop. So this was the filters, which means the filtered signal goes to the buffer and will be filtered again the next time the buffer plays it back. And the double filtered signal will again go to the buffer and so on. So in every round trip, you will turn apples into apples from apples. You know what I mean. So now here in the plugin, we can turn on if we want to have the filter section in the feedback loop, if we want to have the equalizer section in the feedback loop, if we want to have the saturation in the feedback loop, and if we want... Okay, now that's funny, because I boosted the highs, the noise that comes from my keyboard was repeated and repeated again until it was audible. Let's do that again. And that, of course, is only possible because we have the feedback loop on. Because if we're not giving this boost back into the delay line, it will not boost and boost again. And of course, we have this feedback button for the bit crusher and rate crusher. And now we nearly saw everything that we have in this delay line section. But there's one thing left. It's more a graphical thing, but I still definitely want to mention this. And this is if you go here to this timeline thing. As said, if you scroll here, you modify how much you can see. And let's repeat that. If you set the initial time gap to 3, you can set the time gap and the repetition time independently. And now if you do a right click here, you have 2 options you can choose from. And this is the measure. And now we're seeing this in seconds. We can switch that to bars. So now we see only 1 bar, but if I scroll here, we see, okay, 1 and bar 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And the type. So now we see the result, and this is actually not really correct. This is a bit of a lie because the delay line itself just does the initial time gap and the first delay and then does a feedback loop. So this is just visual representation, but that's what I call the result. So the visual representation of what we would hear. And we can switch that to initial time gap and delay. And here now we can adjust the initial time gap and the delay time. This mode might be a bit more for the pros, but I think once you really understood how everything works here, this is a mode which shows you better what's really going on than this other mode. Okay, now let's do one final thing and set this back to synced. And maybe let's take quarter notes, maybe leave the rest as just as it is, some random settings, turn on the delay line number 2 and give that a longer delay and give that a longer initial time gap. So let's say a second and a very short repetition time. Let's say 100 milliseconds and a bit more feedback. So now we have 2 delay lines running. The first delay line doing this and the second delay line doing this. And now we have 2 delay lines together. So you see, you can do interesting patterns with 4 delay lines and all these settings. And now let's move that here. We have even more to look at. There's a lot of things to see, but that will be things for the next days. Let's stop here for today. I hope you have fun with the plugins and bye bye.